Alright, so my name is Caleb Crenshaw, and this is my video for the glider design, build, and fly activity. The requirements for this project were to build a glider that could fly at minimum 20 feet, and after it flew, it wouldn't break or fall apart or anything like that. So to do this, we were given a couple materials. We were given a flat piece of balsa wood. We were given a long, thicker piece of balsa wood that was more like a square or a rectangular prism. And then we were given another smaller piece of balsa wood, which is typically used for the wings. So through the design process, I had to think about how could I utilize all the materials given, because it's obvious that they were there for a reason, but at the same time, make it creative, make it something that I knew would work. So I had a couple different ideas at first. Obviously, I just started thinking of oh, how does an airplane look? And so I wanted to design something like an airplane. Initially, I didn't even use the thicker piece of balsa wood. I ended up just using a flatter piece, something like this, where the whole plane was just as thin as this in the middle. And so obviously this did not end up working out. This original plane, it crashed and fell into pieces even though it was glued together. So for one, I knew that I had to use the balsa wood that was required. So I had my pocket knife, so I was able to carve the build into whatever I wanted. So I was able to cut the pieces into what I had. One big thing that we had to keep in mind was that the plane could only be 16 inches by 16 inches. And so I knew that the larger the plane, the more the base of the wings could be larger, and if you have more surface area on the wings, you could have more lift. But at the same time, I knew that the overall weight of the plane would be a factor that would pull the plane down. So I knew in general, if I wanted to just get 20 feet, a smaller plane with pretty large wings would get the job done. So that's why I chose this size right here. Later on in the video, I'll show it next to a 16 by 16 square, and so you can see how it compares to that. In regards to the design process, one of the biggest things I ended up using was the thicker piece of wood, because it adds more weight in the middle, and so it allowed for most of the weight so that it would be balanced in the front, and then I could have more weight for the larger wings on the side. Another thing that I did was I added an angle on the wing, so this is 25 degrees facing upwards, so that it would fly more effectively, be more aerodynamic. I saw this on one of the gliders online. I don't remember the name of the glider, but it's something that was built to be like a drone, and so it had a similar shape where a lot of the weight was at the front, and it was a really thin, really slim back piece, and then the wings were large and they were tilted upwards to get more lift. In regards to what adhesive I chose the super glue, and it was the fast stick. It was the simplest one to use, and it applied on the wood pretty easily. My other option was wood glue, obviously, and I could have sanded it down so that the wood glue worked better. In hindsight, I probably should have used the wood glue, because the super glue, after if it fell apart or something like that, it's super hard to stick it back on or reapply it, because it doesn't stick to itself. It only sticks to the dry wood, the wood with no super glue on it. But I know the wood glue fills in gaps, so there's no need for me to sand anything down, and so that would probably be the most effective choice. So in order to determine whether or not the glider was balanced for longitudinal stability, I had two pieces of the balsa wood that were left over, and so I placed the plane onto the balsa wood to see where, if it went forward or backwards or whatever. And so after noticing where it went, I ended up adding Play-Doh at the front. It was pretty balanced on that test, but later on in the flight, I ended up seeing that it was it was still kind of back heavy, and so I added just a tad bit more on the front, just to make sure that it would go down and not fly straight up and then spiral down. The point of the center of gravity was about right here, so it is at the front of the quarter cord of my wing, and this is by design, because as you can see, this part of the wood is thicker than this, so a lot of the weight is at the front, and so of course the center of gravity would be in front of the wing, because it's not as much weight going on in the back. It's about half as thick, so that's an important piece. So using the flat plate apron, I can find my lift coefficient. So typically for what would be, I'm considering this kind of like a flat plate because of how flat it is. It is based on the flat plate, the angle at which it increases. So as you can see, there's an increase of, this is 25 degrees upwards. And so the equation for the coefficient of lift would be 2 pi times sine of A. The sine of A is about 0.44 or 422, and then 2 pi is 6 xyz, and so you get 2.655 for your lift coefficient. For the drag coefficient, I used the number for a very similar, like for a plane that doesn't have any, like the wings aren't stalled or anything, which is 0.005. Since I don't have a ruler, I can show that the plane is actually exactly 10 inches. So from this angle, it can go from 10 inches, and then 6 inches is about, 6 more inches is about right here. So that would be 16 on this side. And then when compared to this way, the plane is, or the glider is also about 10 inches because I use the same height and length for the body to make the wings.